first home super saver scheme, I've been saying this for probably as long as it's been around. It's got to be the best kept secret, potentially, for the super system, just left of spouse splitting. And don't comment, Vince. We'll get your comments on that later. Because so many people buy their first home to live in and they don't know how this scheme works. They haven't planned for it. And frankly, today we are updating a video that you and I did years ago back in my studio at my house in Blue Bay.
Wow.
That was quite popular on YouTube.
Okay. Well, yeah,
And,
this is the biggest innovation in first home buying since the 30-year mortgage.
Yeah.
And that was in the early 90s, I'm going to say.
Yeah. You know, I've seen 40-year mortgages now.
Yeah, GE used to do them.
Yeah.
I don't see very many of them, but
No.
GE did them for a while.
Yeah.
They don't exist anymore.
Yeah. So, look, we're going to talk today about the First Home Super Saver Scheme. There is a presentation because we actually are filming this with a YouTube visual focus because of the tables that we've got, some illustrations that I've got. As part of the podcast, I'm acutely aware that there's a huge part of our audience that listens to audio only. I think we try and cover both bases off, but if you are driving to work in the car or on the tractor or whatnot, or you're working and you're listening to this, get back to work. We'll put a link in the show notes,
the so-called show notes,
to the YouTube video,
and we'll paint a word picture for them.
Yeah, we will try. But look, you are joined by regular wildlife here on the podcast, Vince Scully from Life Sherpa. Welcome back, Vincent.
Thank you, Glen. It's great to be back in sunny Bennett's Green.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Bit drier than the last time I was up.
Absolutely. So my name is Glen James, and you are listening to Money, Money, Money. You're listening to Money, 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 or as the regulars like to call us, M3. Everything discussed on the podcast is general advice only, which I'm licensed to give, and details can be found in the show notes. My name's Glen James, former financial advisor, now podcaster. I host this show and a show called Retire Right. I've also got a book called The Quick Start Guide to Investing, which you can check out wherever good books are sold, or there's a link in the show notes. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening today. Now on with the show. Okay, I will proceed to go to presentation mode. Here we go. How the First Home Super Saver Scheme works. Look, as I mentioned, it's one of the best kept secrets, and we don't like death by a PowerPoint here. So, some of these slides are just to...
It's probably Canva anyway, is it?
Well, it is a Canva template, but all the content's ours.
No, what I meant as opposed to PowerPoint.
True. That's when you know you're old, when you say PowerPoint. Anyway, we'll move on. Basically, the First Home Super Saver Scheme allows you to make voluntary contributions into super above the employer super guarantee and later withdraw those amounts plus earnings to help you buy your first home. You benefit from the lower super tax rate of 15% compared to your personal marginal tax rate. And what I want to plant is, later on in this video, Vince, I'm going to show people a little secret that could be worth knowing, but I'll just save it for there because...
Is this called teasing the hook?
I think it is. So look, ordinarily, and this is where I've got my diagram, normal home savings, and this is just to lay the land if you are new to money, new to superannuation, new to any of that stuff. You get paid your salary, you pay tax. Now that tax will be over 30% if you're earning more than 45K. And then that money goes into your bank account as your net pay for living expenses. And then you might have another goal of home savings and you've got a traditional savings account in your name. Mm-hmm. The employer contributions of 12%, they go into your super fund and the super fund automatically takes 15% tax.
Yep.
So we've agreed that's the basics of without First Home Super Saver Scheme, how we save for a house. Now, there could be a supplement here, Vince, that quote-unquote savings account could be a share portfolio.
It could be.
It could be a term deposit. It
Could even be some Bitcoin.
I was about to say it could be BTC. So you might be getting a home sooner or
a TAB account.
Yeah, or later. So that's the general concepts there.
Or cookie jar.
Now, using the First Home Super Savers scheme via salary sacrifice, you'll note here that under this salary thing, we're actually sacrificing our first home savings into super. So you can see this home deposit account is within the super circle. So we are paying 15% tax on that savings.
So instead of putting it in your bank account after your employer gives it, you're just going to tell your employer to give it straight to my super fund and I'll get it later.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really simple way. Now, there is another way that you can do this if you're, I don't know, you could be self-employed, for example, and you want to keep a bit of a cash buffer throughout the year. And then in June at the end of the year, or you could listen to this now and be like, oh, I'm listening to this in June and I'm saving from my first house. I might put $15,000 in right now because I can't turn back time and salary sacrifice. So what you can do, you can put an amount from your savings account in the back door, we'll call it, of superannuation and claim a personal contribution on that. And then the super fund takes the 15% tax and that money that you put in will be tax deductible on your tax return.
So economically, it's broadly the same thing.
Yeah. So there's just two roads into Rome.
All roads lead to Rome, don't they?
They do. I think for the sake of this, Vince, I want to keep it maybe a bit high level. Can we just maybe assume for everything we're going to talk about now, for the First Home Super Saver scheme, is a concessional contribution?
Yes.
Because you can use a non-concessional, but this is a broad tax strategy
and
more than anything.
The benefit of doing non-concessionals is pretty marginal.
Yeah.
It works, but you're better off focusing on concessional contributions.
Yeah. So,
and obviously there's a limit on those.
Yeah, so we'll do that. So effectively, that's right there. That's the three ways things work in this world. Normal savings account, you can do salary sacrifice throughout the year, throughout each pay cycle, or at the end of the year, you can make a judgment call and say, I'm going to throw in $10,000, $15,000 into super. Now, it might be a good time to jump in there and say the total amount that can be used in this scheme is $50,000. However, the limit per year is
15.
Yeah.
And it's still subject to the overall limit of 30,000 in a year for concessionals. So if you're a high earner, a very high earner, and your employer contributions are already $30,000, well, you're
maybe a bit out of luck.
Here.
And because
unless you've got some carry forward ones.
That's right, but you're probably not using this scheme with non-concessional contributions if you're capping out your your CC caps, which is your salary sacrifice, traditional salary sacrifice.
Especially the cheese-flavoured ones.
So ordinarily, when you're ready to buy your house, and we'll get into some practical steps in what order, you have your deposit in the super fund and you put a application to withdraw effectively, and you pull that money out at your marginal tax rate, but a 30% credit is applied. Okay, so that's high level how the world works in flow, basically. You can save in your own name, invest in your own name, knock yourself out in your own name, salary sacrifice, or after-tax personal deductible contribution at the end of the financial year. No more than $15,000 a year, no more than the $30,000 annual concessional cap.
And no more than $50,000 over a lifetime.
Exactly. So I'll throw to Vince now. You put these slides together, and I think you've done it a good way because I usually do stuff on an annualized basis, but you've just helped break this down on a per week. If you get paid $1,471 gross, not including super, just here's your gross pay What are the impacts and the tax differences?
Great. So, I mean, I've done this in a sort of simple, small pieces of money. They're easier to deal with. So if you take an employee who would otherwise be entitled to $1,471 in salary, and they earned between $45,000 a year and $135,000 a year, which is 32% tax rate, including the Medicare levy, that $1,471, if you took it as a paycheck, would give you $1,000 in your pocket. And that's why I picked 1471 as the number. I like round numbers.
Yeah.
I cannot lie. And but if you told your employer to say, well, don't give me that 1471, give it to my super fund.
Yeah.
Your super fund will only pay 15% tax. That's a contributions tax. So that $1,471 becomes $1,250 in your super fund. So far, so good. You're now $250 ahead.
Net.
But we now have to look at what it looks like when you take it back out when it comes time to pay the deposit on your brand new home.
Or new to you.
Yes.
Let's be clear. It's not just for new homes.
Yes. It always feels new when you spend the first night in the bed for the first time. So that $1,250, you pay tax on it when you come out. When you take it out.
$400.
So $400 is 32% of $1,250. But this is where the benefit really comes from, is you get a 30% tax offset on the way out, which means that $400 of tax is reduced by $375, meaning a net $25 tax. So you end up with $1,225 in your pocket. So for that $1,400 of salary, you're now $225 better off than if you'd taken it as cash in the first place. And that's the beauty of it. And for those of you who are running ahead of the maths, 50,000 is 34 times 1,471. And so you can do this 34 times, and that's where the benefit of, looking it up in my notes, 7,650 over your lifetime. So your $50,000 allowance gives you a net $7,650 more money in your pocket purely by washing it through your super fund. And of course, it's been a bit out of sight, out of mind while it's been in there, so you're much less likely to be tempted to spend it on a holiday in the meantime.
So the TLDR of it is, if you, over the years, and this is, I can't stress this enough, it's based on what your salary is and what your available caps are.
Sure.
Even if you did it over 8 years. When
the TLDR.
The TLDR, when this strategy is all said and done and put to bed.
Or the bluff, as we boomers say.
Yeah, the benefit, if you are under the thresholds, even if it took you 8 years, all that stuff, there's $7,650 of free money.
That's right.
Just from the tax saving.
Yeah, which is a 22.5% return on your money, risk-free.
Now, what about when they talk about the deemed investment rate? Is that just incidental? Like, because it's not an investment strategy, this.
No. This is just a tax strategy. So you also, not only do you get to take out your $50,000, you also get to take out the deemed earnings on it. And the rate the government applies is based on what's called a GICS, the General
Interest Savings.
Something charge.
Yeah, because at the moment it's 4 to 5%-ish.
Yeah, it did get to 8 at one point.
It might even be around 7.
It got to 7 or 8 at one point, but it was 3 for a long time.
Yeah.
And so that just gives you more money to take out. And it's, again...
But that money, in theory, it could be... Well, it's investment return.
Yeah, so it could be more or less than what your super fund actually delivered.
Yeah. And that's what I want to get across. This is just a tax flushing strategy.
That's right.
And the investment return that's deemed each year is to prevent you wanting to buy a house next Thursday and the market has shat itself.
That's right. And so the impact of the difference between the deemed rate and the actual rate is worn by 60-year-old Glen, not 30-year-old home buying Glen.
Right.
And so there's a reasonable incentive to keep it invested in a reasonably growthy fund because markets on average go up more than they go down.
Yep.
And so on average you'll be better off and you've got 30 years to catch up.
Yep.
So take the money and run.
Now, this next slide here, you've put this together and it will be needed to see if you want the details, but we can do the wash up. And what you've done here, Vince, you've done 4 income brackets and the impact of this strategy.
So as a general rule, the higher your tax rate, the bigger the benefit.
Yeah.
So we've looked at your average person earning between $45,000 and $135,000, which is a pretty typical first home buyer. If you step up to the next tax level at 39% tax, including the Medicare levy, your $7,650 benefit becomes $8,175, so another $500. And that's really because your marginal tax rate is more different to the 15% super tax.
Yep.
And then if you step up to earn more than $190,000 and you're a 47% taxpayer, the benefit increases by more or less the same to $8,775.
But this is also the dance, Vince. If you are earning $200K, it's going to take you longer to use the first home super save scheme because your contribution caps are going to slow you down.
So if you're earning $200,000, your employer contributions are going to be $24,000 this year.
You're not putting the 15
so
in
you've
this
only
year.
got 6, unless you got carry forward from previous years.
That's
and
right.
you can bring forward 5 years worth. Where it starts to...
but just on that, and this is why it's really important to maybe reach out to Life Sherpa. You've got lots of resources on this.
Lots of stuff on our website on this one.
The trick there is, and because there's always moving plates with legislation and rules, so you might say, I've got carry forward available in the cap, but remember, using this scheme, you can only put $15K a year in, accounted to that scheme. So you could have $50,000 of available carry forward from your years at university and you've landed your first grad job that's amazing. You can't just rock and go, I'm going to put $20,000. Sure, you'll get the tax savings, but if you need to pull this money out, the portion above the 15.
So there's quite a few moving parts in this. But the one I was just going to move on to the one point where it may not be hugely beneficial, and that is if you are earning over $250,000. You get hit by what's called the Division 293 tax, which is an extra 15% tax on your contributions. And that reduces the benefit to $2,550.
Yeah.
And as Glen just pointed out, you're also less likely to have spare concessional contribution limits to be able to make additional contributions. So if you're earning over $250,000, good on you, but this might not be the right answer for you. Or if you're earning less than $45,000,
you don't want to
be the
entertain
answer
this.
for you. So,
and the reason why is because it's the tax paid outside super. You might end up paying more tax by doing contributions.
So that's the bottom line in all of this thing.
So let's go through the rates as a summary. If you're earning between 45K up to 130K, the maximum benefit you'll get is around 7,650. Above 135K up to the 190, there's $8,175 of free money. Between 190 and 250, there's $8,775 of free money. And then $2,500.
Yeah, and then there's some more that comes from the earnings, but that's hard to predict in advance.
Yeah. So someone might say, Vince, I have put $30,000 in to my super fund, additional over the last 5 years. And I will note, if any money that's gone in before 2017 when the Liberal Turnbull / Morrison government introduced this, you can't use that money before 2017. But just on this, when we look at the what was my train of thought?
Yeah. And so just in theory, while you're thinking of that, you could in theory do this over 37 months.
Yes.
So you could start in June 2025. We've just passed that, but assuming you got in before the end of the tax year, you could have put some money in last Friday and pull it out in July 2028, having got the full 50,000 in.
Yes.
Assuming you had limits to allow you to do that. And so it's sort of never too late to do this. There's no time limit the money has to be in there. So if you haven't thought about this yet and you plan on buying a house next month or the month after, you can put your money in for this year and pull it out 3 days later and you get this year's benefit.
Yeah.
So there's very little reason why you wouldn't.
Okay, so just on the, actually, that was my point. A couple of things. If I put $30,000 in over the last 5 years, additional to my employer contributions, when I do the determination, it's $30,000 plus the deemed earnings.
Correct. So a determination.
So you could get $33,000 out.
Yeah.
And they'll tax the full 33 at the marginal tax rate less the 30% credit.
Yeah. And of course your super fund's paid either 10 or 15% on those earnings.
Yeah.
You rarely see that because it's usually buried in the unit price, but that's the net effect of what's happening there. So a determination in that context, good point, Glenn, is that when you're ready to take your money out, you apply to the tax office for what's called a determination, which is the ATO saying, here's how much you can have, Glenn. And they do all the maths around the earnings and stuff. And
the
earnings
ATO?
The ATO. Yeah. And the earnings are done quarterly. And so you go onto MyGov, ask for a determination, and it'll tell you how much you are allowed to take out. When you're ready, you then say you apply to withdraw your money, and you'll get it within a week or so.
Yeah. We will talk about some considerations, particularly around when you are ready to buy the house. A couple of things. If you put $10,000 in on the 1st of June, the end of the financial year ticked over. On the 1st of July, you put another $10,000 in. On the 5th of July, a few days later, you can put a determination in to withdraw the $20,000 because you've just flushed it through.
Yeah. So all you have to do is make sure that your super fund has processed it as a concessional contribution. Yeah. So if you're doing it from other than from salary sacrifice, you'll need to make sure you've lodged your notice of intent.
Yeah.
But broadly, as soon as the ink is dry on your deposit, you can pull it back out again.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we'll be right back after this with some considerations and that tease that I think's the best part of this. Maybe it's an unintended consequence of the legislation, but I love talking about it. We'll be right back after this.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. But if you want guidance tailored to your situation, head to moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help. We'll connect you with one of our trusted professionals, financial advisors and mortgage brokers, who work with people right across Australia. No matter where you are, they can help. Now, before we get back to the show, a quick reminder to protect your financial life. That means having income protection sorted. It means having death cover if there's any debt or dependents relying on you. It means getting your personal insurance in order. Most people insure their car, they insure their house, but what about themselves? Sky Wealth, who support this podcast, are specialist financial advisors who can help you get the right cover in place. Their advice is often more comprehensive and better value than going direct through your super. Book a complimentary 15-minute chat at sky.com.au. That's skye.com.au, and they'll point you in the right direction.
Okay, we'll go to some considerations, Vince.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do, let's just talk about some practicalities. If your deposit that you need for the new home to you is $20,000 or 50, no, it wouldn't be 20,000. We'll call it, if you needed a $100,000 deposit, you don't have to have the whole deposit that's in this scheme. You can save $20,000 or $10,000 in this scheme, or, oh crap, I do want to buy a house next Thursday, or I'll flush $15,000 through now and then put that $15,000 back towards the house and get a small tax win on the way through. And you could work that out based on if you're in that tax range, you're going to be saving money.
Yeah.
Like that's at the end of the day, it's a tax strategy. So it doesn't need to be the full amount.
Correct.
If there was a couple, both can use these schemes respectively for the one joint house to both live in.
As long as they are both first home buyers.
Yes.
Yep. So the only qualification here really is you've got to be first home buyer.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you qualify for whatever stamp duty exemptions or first home grant or first home buyer guarantee scheme or any of these other government schemes. The only condition is that you are a first home buyer.
Yeah. So
and a taxpayer and over 18.
That's right. Well, and that your super fund does participate in the scheme. So
but you can always move it to another fund.
That's right. So some considerations here, as we've said, you can only do it once in your lifetime, $15,000 per year within the caps, maximum $50,000. It can be concessional or not concessional. Check your super fund does do it. Now, this is the bit that I wanted to talk about. Since 2017, if you have been salary sacrificing to superannuation, Vince, if you have been, I'm going to do future me a little favour and put more money in my super each month since 2017, you, my friends, may have a house deposit and not even know it.
That's right. So just go to MyGov and have a look. Just on that point about concessionals and non-concessionals and not knowing what you might have in your fund, is that there are some employers, particularly government employers, who previously paid more than the SGC amount.
As a match? Or
just as an additional contribution.
Like a benefit.
Just as an employee benefit. When the rules around the fund that you could put it in and some of the enterprise bargains changed, the excess bit became a non-concessional contribution. And non-concessional contributions are not as attractive in this deal as concessional ones. And your concessions come out in the order they went in. So you do need to double-check what your concessionals were. This is all in MyGov, so go log in, have a look. And that... you said not all super funds participate, so obviously check with your super fund. You can always fix it by rolling the money into another super fund that does at the last minute. Yeah. Obviously fees
terms, charges, conditions, read the PDS, that's all that. This was filmed on a confined circuit with a professional driver or the fine print. Yes. But I just want to touch on a couple of things there. Let's now potentially talk about the process, how that plays out. Then we'll come back and talk about changing your mind and all that stuff. So I've been diligently salary sacrificing to super the last few years, and I've just learned that I might have a home deposit in my super and not know it. Or I've been using this scheme since 2018. And I want to buy a property. You have to go to your super fund.
Yeah. So the route is ATO first, get a determination.
Yes.
You can do that online as many times as you want. MyGov it works really well. Once you've got your determination, you can then apply to your super fund to get the money back, and it will just turn up in your bank account.
And that's a similar way when you need to get money out of super for surgery or...
Just there's no tax. Well, there's a different tax applies. But broadly it's the same process.
Because basically how the super funds work, they can only release money as per preservation rules and all that, or the conditions of release.
And this is one of them.
And this is one of them. But they need formal notification that we can do this.
Yeah, and you need to do that before you sign the contract.
Because once you sign a contract, you purchase the place.
That's right.
And now when you put the determination in, have you ever purchased a first home ever before? You're like, no, I haven't. Well, yeah, because lunchtime yesterday you signed that contract.
Yeah.
So
you want to do this,
over.
So you do this before you sign the contract, and the money turns up in your bank account. You don't actually have to use those specific dollars for your deposit, but you do have to buy a property after getting your determination.
Yeah. And that leads into auctions. So you would have as part of – do you know the time period once you've got the determination that the individual super funds can act on it?
It's pretty quick. With SuperStream now, this stuff is all happening.
Yeah, within a few days.
Within days.
No, but I mean, so if I logged into MyGov tomorrow, got a determination, went to my super fund, like are they going to act on a determination that I did 4 months ago?
Yeah, I mean
Well, you'd want to do it just before anyway for the up-to-date.
So you can do as many determinations as you want.
Right.
So just keep it up to date, but make sure you do it before you actually sign the contract. It works really well.
Yeah.
This has become such a standard. When it first came in 2018, did we say 2017?
17.
It was a bit clunky.
Yeah.
But they've integrated this stuff all into MyGov so well, and now almost everyone has a MyGov account, that it's just become so easy, and it just works.
So ATO, then super fund, then the super fund will pay this money just back into your everyday bank account that you nominate.
Yep.
Now, if you did have extra cash or you borrowed some money from your parents, because or whatever that is, it all comes out in the wash. You've used that amount for your first home.
And there's no check that says you use those specific dollars for your house. So you could save that for your furniture or pay your stamp duty or...
But you have actually purchased the first home.
Yeah. So you then have to tell the tax office that you bought a home.
Yeah.
And that now clears the slate.
Yeah. And you'll do that at the first tax return after you've been paid out.
You lodge a form for it. There is a time frame, which I think might be 12 months, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
And yes, I think it's 12 months, and you can get an extension for another 12. So that's between getting the money and buying the house, because you might miss out on that auction. So there is some flexibility. And then if you don't buy a house within the time and you've taken the money out, you have two choices. You can put it back.
As the first home super scheme, so it restores, it goes back in?
No, it loses its character, I think. I'm not quite sure about that one. I have to double check that one, but I'd be fairly confident that it loses its character and is then now subject to the normal conditions release.
Yeah, so you really, and because I think anytime I've done content on this, I'm like, just be careful around auctions with this stuff because...
But you can always do the determination, go to auction, and that's fine. Or you can just take the money and you've got a 12 months and then potentially another 12 months. So when you get serious, when you're getting that close to buying, be prepared is the short answer. And if you don't want to put it back, you can keep it and just pay a little bit extra tax.
Okay, so that's in the same vein as changing your mind. So I've gone along life saving for my first home, realised that, real estate's nuts at the moment. I'm not going to buy my first home to live in because I'm going to rent an apartment in the city where I work. Yeah. I'm going to buy an investment property elsewhere.
Or I'm going to move to London.
All that stuff. You can do the determination to get the money out and not buy the house.
Correct. You now pay a little bit of a penalty tax of 20%.
Yeah.
So the net effect of all of that is, so for our 32% taxpayer, you're on that $1,000, you pay a net additional $250 in tax. which leaves you with $975 compared to the $1,000 you would have had you never played this game.
Yeah.
So as an option fee, $25 sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah. I think any young person should use this scheme
Yeah.
as a hedge.
Yeah. So if you think you're going to buy a house in the next
5 years.
decade, well,
Whatever.
I always talk about a decade as
Yeah.
being long enough that if you're 25, the average first home buyer is now 35. So, and a decade is long enough for the scheme not to be abolished. So if you're the 32% taxpayer, you're going to pay an extra $250 in tax, leaving you $25 worse off than if you'd never played the game. The $135,000 to $190,000 taxpayer ends up paying an extra $278, so they're about $11 worse off than if they've never played the game. And for our $190,000 to $250,000, they're actually better off than if they'd never played the game. So they end up with $1,010. It doesn't look very good at all if you are in that greater than $250,000. So,
and that's another silver lining. If you have been salary sacrificing to super for many years and you have not purchased a first home and you are not planning to purchase a first home, you might do a determination and get some money back out of super if your plans have changed and you want to
And so if
buy a holiday around the world, which we're not advocating, pulling money out of super to spend now. But the reality is, if you're a person that's never, ever purchased a home and you've been salary sacrificing or put non-concessional contributions in, you can get that money back out of super by doing this determination. But there is a little exit penalty, which is not a showstopper.
No. And in fact, if you earn between 190 and 250, you're actually better off marginally. I don't think I'd do the strategy just for the extra $10.
No.
But as a worst case that says, I've changed my mind, I'm never going to buy a home
To live in.
and I don't want to leave the money there till I turn 60. So that's a lot of conditions that you got to be concerned about to make this worse off. So the only other thing that we see quite a bit of at LifeSherpa is KiwiSaver.
Yeah, talk to us
which
about
has
that.
an interesting interworking with this here. So if you move from New Zealand and you've got a KiwiSaver balance in New Zealand, if you stayed in New Zealand, you could use that to buy your first home. If you haven't done so in New Zealand, you can transfer your KiwiSaver to Australia if you move to Australia. There's only a handful of funds that support this. And that money will also be available to withdraw to buy for your first home.
Or change your mind.
And the trick for young players here is that your KiwiSaver transfer from New Zealand to Australia will be counted as a non-concessional contribution. And because...
But in Kiwi land, does it go into the KiwiSaver pre-tax? And
there
concessional tax?
is that concessional tax, yeah. So, but if it's already in there and you move... I'm not sure you'd want to be doing this preemptively. If you lived in New Zealand and thought you might move to Australia in a decade, that's probably a bit too far beyond the pale. But if you've got a KiwiSaver and you've moved to Australia, the money comes across as a non-concessional contribution, so it doesn't count against your $30,000 cap.
Oh, I thought you said concessional.
No, non-concessional.
Right.
And this is where it gets a bit tricky. So when you're getting your determination for your first home super saver, your contributions come out in the order they went in. So if you've been making a mixture of concessional and non-concessionals, you've got to be careful what order you do them in. And generally you don't want to be making non-concessionals in any year where you haven't already used your $15,000 concessionals for first home super saver. So if you are bringing money across from a KiwiSaver, you probably want this to be the last contribution before you withdraw it. or in a year, or in the last year after you've made your $15,000, so that you can pull it out without it. If you do get the timing right, you actually get that as well as the $50,000 through the super. But lots of moving parts there. We do a lot of KiwiSaver transfers.
The only other thing that we touched on it a little bit earlier. I'm probably a fan of this, even though there might be an additional account fee, just for your own sanity and quarantining. Have a separate super fund just for your home saving.
Yeah, I mean, that does make it neat. The downside, and administrative simplicity is always a good thing. The downside is that you might not have enough cash in it to pay out the deemed earnings.
If there was a downturn.
Yeah. Or if you've invested in cash, for example, which is one of the good reasons to keep it separate. Now, you can fix that by rolling over money from your other super fund.
After you get the determination.
Yeah. So some of our members keep it in a cash account within their normal super fund. You can't always just take it from the cash piece depending on the fund you're in.
I don't think you can tell your employer to pay my salary sacrifice into a second fund.
You can. Well, if you've got a segregated account, like if you're in a wrap account,
yes,
you can manage that process.
That's right.
But not in a standard.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think practically, because it is the dance. If you're hell-bent on, I want a separate super fund just for my home savings, you'd probably just do a weekly post-tax contribution.
Possibly, yep.
Into that separate super fund, put it in the 50-50 split, conservative, 50% growth, whatever. And then you just, in June every year, all the contributions that have gone into that separate account, you've just got to do a notice of intent to claim.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a bit of a tax return at the end of the year.
Yeah. So this is a trade-off between administrative simplicity, the psychology of knowing it's a separate pool, and the dealing with, what happens if the market doesn't deliver the deemed return.
And this is probably in finishing why a lot of people don't use this, because it's scary. Oh, what if I put money in and I can't get it out? Or how do I get it out? I don't know why the federal government just didn't say we're giving every first home buyer $5,000 extra grant. Like, it's clunky, it's messy.
Yeah. Or just allow everyone to take $50,000 out of their super fund to pay for their deposit.
Yeah, whatever.
It is unnecessarily complicated, but it is, the closest you can get to a no-brainer in personal finance. And so if you are earning under $250,000 and you're a first-home buyer and you think you might buy a house in the next decade to live in, like if you're planning on rent vesting, this is not a strategy for you.
Yeah, so I've got friends, they haven't purchased their first home yet, they're renting. I'll send this clip to them, initials B and J.
B and Q.
They need to start doing this. As, they're a couple, they've probably got first home savings. Just start doing this. Even if you both set up a separate super fund each, like, I'll help you. I give advice, but because it's just up to $7,650 per person of free money. Now,
and that's my favourite sort.
But this is the weird thing. You're not seeing that as a lump in your bank account.
Yeah.
But as time goes on and when the wash-up happens, you'll have more money.
Yeah. And the psychology for me is that, if you could have saved $1,000, you can now see $1,250 more in your super fund.
Yeah.
And if you keep looking at your balance from time to time, you can see this building up.
Yeah.
Go onto MyGov and do a determination to keep yourself motivated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're a first home buyer and you are going to buy a home before you buy an investment property, and you earn under $250,000 or more than $45,000, you should seriously consider this.
Yeah.
There's very little reason why you shouldn't be doing this.
Cool. So
even if you're in a defined benefit scheme. So you might be in a government defined benefit scheme, whether you're in the military or working for a university. You can do this in a separate fund. So you don't have to do it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So look, if you want quarantined money for your first home, if you want to save money, this is for you.
Yeah, there are very few no-brainers in personal finance, and this is one of them.
Well, there you have it. If you found this useful, please send it to a friend or family member who is a first home buyer.
And if you
Maybe
didn't like
not
it,
now, if they're 25, they just started their career and don't know what they want to do and all that, well, just a little bit.
cool. And if you didn't like it, save your breath to cool your porridge.
Also, I've just thought of a potential idea. Parents who want to help their kids out with a home deposit, you could set up a separate super account and your parents might give you money through your name into that super fund. So it's a way that parents, if they want to actually put cash up or whatever.
Yeah, just make sure that it goes through your own bank account.
Yes,
not straight from your parents'
So they
bank
effectively
account.
gift you money and then you decide to put it into that. So,
But yep, great idea.
yeah. All right, my name's Glen James. Vin Scully, thanks so much for watching and listening. Bye.
Bye for now.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive Pty Ltd, the publisher of this podcast, and Glen James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds financial services license 451289. Opinions or comments from any guests on the podcast are theirs and not those of the host or the publisher or their respective license holders.